Hi, everybody. Welcome to our session. I see people are still flowing in. I'll just make a few early remarks and then we'll get into the panel. We're so happy to have you with us today. I'm Marni Baker-Stein. I'm the Chief Academic Officer and the Provost at Western Governors University. And we are here today to talk about the Open Skills Network and the future of skills-based education and hiring. The Open Skills Network is a young, scrappy, and very focused coalition of universities, employers, government agencies, and the military who are on a mission to create the foundation for a more diverse and equitable labor market. We're all imagining a future where learner workers are empowered with an evolving understanding of their skills and their experience and the value of those skills and experiences in the marketplaces where they live. And a future where educators and employers are empowered to help them take their shot. WGU first became involved in this work to deepen our commitment to competency-based education. For a couple of years, we've been heads down in the work of defining rich, dynamic, contextualized skills descriptions that we can tag to our competency definitions. Our aim, apart from sort of pure geeky joy, is to surface this dynamic skills information to our learners in ways that give them access to a new skills-based record of achievement that they can hold in their hand, and a powerful set of compassing intelligence as they build their careers even prior to their first degree. Frankly, this effort and this journey that WGU has been on has been expensive and complicated and a little bit lonely, but not anymore. The Open Skills Network has provided a solver community and a maker community that promises to provide a real lift to skills-based education and employment practices for all of us who are committed to the work. We call ourselves skills warriors. In today's panel, we'll talk to some of the early instigators and troublemakers and thought leaders behind the Open Skills Network. Thank you, panelists, for being here today. I am so excited for all of you to get a chance to tell your stories. We're going to start by letting everybody introduce themselves, but before we do that, I would like to introduce Matt Gee, who is my co-moderator and who will be taking on the chat today. We would really like for everybody to, and if everybody could put on their mics, that would be awesome, or mute their mics, that would be awesome, because everybody's live in this session. Matt's going to be moderating the chat today, which is wonderful because Matt is knower of all things and answer of all question skills. So we're really happy to have him on the chat. I'm going to turn it over to Matt and he can give you, introduce himself and give you some tips about how to engage in Q&A throughout the session today. Matt?
It's a pleasure to be co-hosting this with Marni and to be part of such a great panel. As Marni said, we're going to divide and conquer, and I will be moderating the chat. So just a few rules of the road. Obviously, if folks can stay muted unless you're a panelist that's talking, but we invite folks to start asking questions right from the get-go. We're not going to wait to the end for Q&A. If you've got questions, we'll be very, very active in the chat, trying to get as many of them answered as possible about the OSN. We want a vigorous discussion in the chat as well. So when themes are being brought up by Marni and being discussed by the different panelists, it'd be great to have folks discussing those same things from your perspective within the chat. And we'll try to make that really active over the next 54 minutes. So looking forward to seeing you all in the chat.
Wonderful. Thanks, Matt. Thanks everybody for being here once again. Let's introduce our participants. We'll start in reverse alphabetical order with Connie Yowell.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Connie Yowell and I'm an Executive Vice President at Southern New Hampshire University, and it's great to be here.
Jason Tiszko, you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Marni. My name is Jason Tiszko. I'm Vice President at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and its foundation. I'm proud to be an OSN member.
Andy Trainor, you're up next.
Good afternoon, Andy Trainor. I'm the Chief Learning Officer for the Walmart U.S. business. Happy to be here.
We're happy to have you here. Kacey Thorne.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Kacey Thorne, a primary skills troublemaker and director of skills architecture with WGU.
Awesome. And speaking of troublemakers, next up, Wayne Skipper.
Ha ha ha. I think that I should change my title. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Wayne Skipper, founder and CEO of Concentric Sky.
And Phil Komarny.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for, great to be here. I'm Vice President of Innovation at Salesforce and a seasoned skills warrior.
So true. Kelly Bailey.
Hi, everyone. Kelly Ryan Bailey here. I'm the Director of Open Skills at Emsi, which is a Libra market analytics firm, and I'm also the host of Let's Talk About Skills, baby.
I love that. And Matt, did you want to introduce yourself? You know, give us a little background on you.
Oh, sure. I'm just your friendly neighborhood skills data nerd. I'm the CEO of Brighthive.
Wonderful. Okay, so we're going to start in this panel with talking to some of our educator and employer practitioners of the skills work. And my question is, sorry, I've always got a long question, but let me just get through this. You know, as we've all been working on this Open Skills Network and all the skills work that we've all been doing for years, we've been talking a lot about the urgency at hand around reskilling and upskilling Americans, and particularly those now who are hardest hit by this pandemic. And we've been talking about how to really think through in our various contexts, whether we are higher education providers or K-12 providers or employers, how do we more effectively bring talent to opportunity in real time? You all are out there in your different contexts doing this work, digging in. What problems do you think that skills-based education and hiring can help us to solve? So let's start with Kacey Thorne.
Thanks, Marni. So when I think about the problems that we can solve with both skills-based hiring and education practices, for me, it's really twofold. And these are the things that make me so interested in skills work. This is why I'm here. This is why I'm a skills warrior. And the first one is that we need better opportunities to award credit where credit is due. We know that degrees and credentials in general are really poor proxies for being able to represent what the skills are that someone actually has and what they can do as far as career opportunities are concerned. So we really, I think, through a skills-based system of education and hiring, we allow our learner workers to capitalize on the skills that they have earned, no matter where they've earned them. We're picking up skills across a lifetime, be it in professional experiences, in education, in personal hobbies and interests. And to be able to build and capitalize on those skills is really important, I think. And then the second piece to this, skills-based hiring and education practices really are kind of a great equalizer when it comes to opportunity. And so I think skills really provide more clarity in what those pathways to opportunities are, both when it comes to pursuing career mobility, but also opportunities to build and demonstrate skills, maybe in non-traditional ways, not necessarily in educational settings always. So being able to provide more clarity to learner workers about where they can actually build skills, where they can demonstrate skills, and what the skills are that they need in order to pursue that next opportunity, be it because of a job loss or they want to upskill for a promotion in their current field. Just identifying those pathways right now is a challenge. When I think about my own professional career, I was an English literature undergrad, and I don't think I really realized as part of that, that I was an undergrad in English lit, and then one day I would be a skills warrior. And that the skills that I was developing as part of my educational training were really helping me with my sense-making skills and the ability to draw inferences based on analysis and information that I'm gathering from different sources, or my ability to craft systems thinking skills and understanding cause and effect in decision-making processes. So being able to see those skills that I'm developing in my coursework and where they could potentially be applicable across different careers, I think is really important in pursuing opportunities that might otherwise go unexplored.
For sure, especially for those learners who don't have the windows around them to really understand the pathways that might actually be right there in the zip code where they live. Andy, Trainor, we've been working a lot with you all in thinking through the skills dilemma and the notion of rich skills descriptors. What do you feel like is the direction that you're moving toward in the future of skills-based education and hiring? What problem are we solving there?
Yeah, for us, it's pretty unique, and COVID really accelerated it. Is that the skills needed for jobs and the jobs themselves are changing faster than ever. You think 6-8 months ago, we had very few associates working in a store that had to deliver groceries to a customer, whether it be in their car or at their home. And now we have hundreds of thousands of associates. That's what they do. And so preparing someone for that job, they have to have different skills, from working in a back room to interacting with customers. So that change is just going to go faster and faster as we move more toward digital and the customer's needs change based on the situation. So how we get workers and our associates ready for those jobs is really down to the skills they need versus the tasks they have to do. And so by focusing on skills, we can connect those skills to future jobs when they do show up, so they're more prepared for that. So that, for us, that's the big one, is really preparing for those new roles and the change in the customer demands and making sure that we can prepare them for that in a timely manner. I think the other is allowing us to find the right talent faster. So it's no secret that retail jobs, entry-level jobs, are a lot of jobs people do during school, college, second jobs. And so there's a lot of turn. And so we spend an enormous amount of time validating and retraining people who may already have the skills we need, but we just don't know it because there's no way to track it or understand it. So being skills-based will allow us to identify who's got what skill, not waste time to retrain them if they already know it, and use that for further, whether it be advancement throughout the company, whether it be for scheduling. So we know who has what skills. If you can decorate a cake, or you can mix paint, all types of things across the store. This allows us to see that and understand who can do what and where. And then I think the last part is really just speed to value add work. We assume a lot when we hire someone that we need to train them on these skills. If there's a way that we know they've already got them and we can connect them, we can get them to really serving the customer faster in a meaningful way than spending a lot of time retraining them on things they already know how to do.
Phil, how are you framing the problem at Salesforce?
Yeah, I think framing the problem is, we believe in skills, and we even have this website called Trailhead that allows our ecosystem or our Ohana to be able to skill up and be able to help our customers attain their goals. So we really believe in this skills-based delivery model. I think what you mentioned about the limitations by zip code, that's one thing that we can really start to not model our analog world, but our digital world is much more equitable and much more able to really disperse the opportunity to all of this talent that's out there. So I think we can really talk about diversity and equity a lot differently when we think about something where the bar is just your rigor, your merit, and the skills that you have. And that speaks to me personally. I really think that's something that's empowering for people. And on the other side, for the business, I mean, Salesforce is a large platform CRM business. We have a lot of customers, 250,000 customers all over the world. And we're projecting like 4.2 million jobs in our ecosystem by 2024. And how are we gonna support that? Because our customers use our platform in different ways to solve different problems. So we have to have the talent to go along with that. So we're really taking this approach where we want to inspire people with their skills-based profile and show them that's their compass, and here are the maps to your success, and how can you gain those yourself. So then we get to a way to really get to a cohort of one when we start to think about curriculum design and ways that we can really get people to their goal quicker and really make it a competitive advantage to a business that really takes this pathway to inspire their employees to grow with them and change with them.
Yeah, and we are seeing a lot of positive comments about the Trailhead model, which is truly a skills-based model at scale. So powerful. Connie, why don't you finish up this part of the panel? How are you understanding the problem to be solved at Southern New Hampshire University and in your work?
Sure, thanks, Marni, and thanks for hosting this panel. It's a really critical time to be talking about this. Yeah, so I'm coming from the perspective of a university, and in many respects, I'm coming from the perspective of a learner. And so in doing that at a high level, I would say, and sort of to continue to add on to the conversation that everyone else has been having, that at a really high level, what the skills conversation is for us is fundamentally about equity. Right. And so part of where inequality lies is where we have disconnection. And the disconnection from the higher ed perspective and from the learner perspective can often happen at the disconnection between how we talk about learning, how we talk about our courses, and how the world of work talks about jobs and talks about the skills that are needed. And so when we don't have the same language and aren't talking about those things in the same way, it means only those who have had previous experience and know both systems well are going to be able to build those connections. And that's a privilege to have that kind of information. So where we have those disconnects, we have inequality. And so for us, the core conversation is about how do we build connections between what we are doing in our courses and in our university, the experiences our learners are having, and where they're going to go and have impact and opportunity in the world. So for us, this becomes a conversation and a chance to actually talk about re-architecting opportunity for our learners. And I think there are three core problems that it begins to solve for us. So the first one is the one I just described, which is creating interoperability in the language we use across working in our courses. A really simple example is, for example, if the workforce is asking in their job descriptions for problem solving and critical thinking, and we're describing our courses in terms of the writing and math skills that one is getting, when in fact, often writing and math, particularly in gen ed, is a context for learning problem solving and critical thinking. But we don't make those connections. It's really hard to know that in taking those courses, you're actually getting ready for that job. So that's the language thing is just really critical. The second is we really want to be able to empower our students to be self-directed in what they learn and how they connect what they're learning to the world. They can't do that unless they can go and look at a job or a job description, see the skills that are necessary for that job, and be able to backward map into how to skill up, right? And so the skills conversation is enabling that conversation to happen. And as importantly, it's enabling us to chunk. So we still believe that the degree is going to be super important, but the degree takes 2 to 4 years. We have to be able to, in that pathway to getting the 2 to 4 year degree, be able to chunk it so that our students are earning badges and credentials along the way that make them employable. Last thing, and I'll say it really quickly, is for our learners, learning at its core is about identity. And so as part of identity and motivation, I as a learner need to be able to tell my story in a meaningful way. It's one thing to be able to tell your story as a college graduate. That's awesome, and we want to empower that. But we want our learners to be able to talk about themselves in a way that is about their skills and that they can directly talk to an employer in the way about what they've been learning. So that's sort of an example of the three big things that this is doing for us.
Yeah, I love that. I love that continuous transformation of the self. That's super powerful. I'm going to ask each one of you who we've just heard from, if you had to sum up in a few words, all this amazing work that you're doing and complicated work and groundbreaking work that you're doing is so important. We all know there's friction in it. If you had to sum up in a word or a few words, that biggest friction or your biggest implementation blocker to getting to this future and getting to this value, what would it be? Let's go the other direction. Connie?
Sorry, I'm on mute. I would say it's old tech systems. I would say that we really have to, some of your other panelists are going to speak to this, but I think that we need some new kinds of technology and new standards in order to make this work.
Absolutely. Phil, what are your thoughts on this? What are your blockers?
I was thinking about that for a while, Marni. I don't think there are any blockers anymore. I actually want to come at this in a positive light. I think we actually have a room full of innovators that are ready to do this, and it's cross-sector, and it's finally, I think it's going to happen. So I want to be negative, but I really don't think there's anything in our way anymore.
Awesome. What about you, Andy?
I would say a common skills language. My biggest concern is that the way I define a skill is different than another company. And so kind of to Connie's point is that we're all talking the same thing, but different ways. And then I can't transfer it and use that across.
Kacey, what about you? What do you think?
I think along some of the same lines as Andy, it's going to take a shared commitment to skills transparency and interoperability, and really a critical mass of commitment to operationalizing skills as that foundational currency. It's going to take a lot more skills warriors to move this forward.
Awesome. I totally agree. And for all of the skills warriors in the chat, love the comments flowing through. Please ask questions as we're going through so we can steer the conversation in your direction. And so Matt can sort of reach out and get you some answers as well from the work that we're doing on the OSN. We're going to shift directions now and talk to our sort of technical solvers, the Jedi masters of skills technology, and ask a few questions to them. So the question that I have in mind is, you've all been pouring yourself, I know, into the work of solving for skills-based education and skills-based hiring over the years. What are you working on now that you believe is really moving the dial? And how do you think what you're working on is going to move us forward? And what's the timeline for that? So let's start with Kelly Bailey.
Thank you so much. This has just been such a great discussion already. Well, here at Emsi, what we're working on is really sort of the facilitation of all of this through technology, as well as the foundational common language that's just built off of insights from what employers are looking for. I really appreciated that point that many of the initial folks made, which was we want to make sure that what our learners are talking about, or people in our ecosystem, really matches up with what employers are looking for. And so the work that we're doing here on the open skills library that we actually open sourced as a freely accessible tool is allowing us to take that insight and bring it to everyone to use. And that is including a ton of open resources and technologies that we're working on just to help facilitate every player in the ecosystem. We want employers, people, educators, all having a very simple ability to align to open skills. Some of these free resources are things like we have a free resume optimizer, and that's just really helping any person out there align their resume to what employers are looking for specific jobs, which is really fascinating. We also have a free personalized learning and career pathways tool, and that's allowing people to figure out, what do I look like right now in terms of skills, and how can I move forward with little pieces of learning instead of like that whole degree as we discussed, although working towards that, of course. And then some of the things that we're working on as well, just to help others start facilitating, are ways to actually navigate and utilize this library into these rich skill descriptions through reading documents as well. Some of the other free tools that I'll at least plug, although maybe like we have to be their little secret, but everyone here is going to know now, are a job posting optimizer tool, because we don't want to forget employers. They need to do the same thing. They need to help us by doing a better job at writing their job postings, because that helps us use that language a lot better. And also a skills-based resume builder, because there are so many people, especially in this time right now, that don't even have a resume to speak of. And so they need some way to be able to signal back out to employers where they're at, what they have now, and what they can do.
Thanks, Kelly. Jason, you're doing a lot of this work with employers, really trying to build that ecosystem of employers who can write skills-based job descriptions and support them in this work. What are you working on now that you really think is going to move the dial on this front? Because it is such an important point.
Thank you, Marni. Really appreciate the opportunity to join this panel, and also to be a member of the OSN network. And to that question, there's a few things that we're doing, so I will do my best to be as concise as possible. The constituency I represent, the business community, we know based upon our surveys and feedback from our membership, they are increasingly interested in moving towards skill-based hiring. But that's more than rhetoric. That takes a data infrastructure to make it a reality. So we have a number of efforts underway to make skill-based hiring and learning real for learners, workers, as well as for companies who are going to increasingly compete on talent. So within the T3 Innovation Network, which WGU is a member of, and we're at the chambers trying to bring the T3 resources and partnerships to the OSN community now. We have been hard at work at doing a few different things. Number one, making sure that individuals have learning and employment records that can capture learning regardless of where it occurs, and to document it as skills and competencies that could be exchanged and shared across different IT platforms and translated. That's really important. So we need to be able to have the data infrastructure to render skills as currency and to exchange and translate them as such. So we've had a number of partnerships underway that are trying to leverage open data standards and other enabling technologies to be able to produce LERs at scale and to truly share them across domains, education to employment, military to education, and so on and so forth. So that's one piece. Another thing we've been working on in partnership with Brighthive and Matt Gee is the job data exchange. And one thing we realize is if you want to do skills-based hiring, you need a data standard to support that, particularly for the job descriptions that Kelly was just mentioning. So how are we moving towards more structured data on competencies and skills in the context of a job description or posting? We built a data standard for that. It's called the JDX Job Schema Plus, and now we're trying to promote its adoption and use in employer hiring systems. So we need structured data on the learner side, we need structured data on the job side, and now we're cooking. Then what we need is the translation support services. And I noticed in some of the chat, folks are referencing our artificial intelligence and other translation challenges. That's going to be critical because there's likely not ever going to be one single taxonomy to rule them all in the world, but we're going to have a distributed network of libraries, registries, frameworks, you name whatever your preferred name is. But we need to be able to populate whether they're jobs, whether they're learner records, and to be able to translate across these domains using different taxonomies. But it's not science fiction. It's something that's eminently achievable with the emerging data infrastructure. And then the last thing I wanted to mention, Marni, is it's coming up with a skills-based approach in and of itself is not a panacea. This is not just a technology problem. If we want to go in this direction and get it right, you need the data infrastructure, but you also have to solve the human problem. And we need to fundamentally revisit from a change management point of view, how we actually teach, how we document the learning, how employers actually do the hiring. And it's more than rhetoric. It's changing culture in practice to move towards that skill-based ecosystem. So one of the other initiatives that we hope to bring as a partnership to OSN is our talent pipeline management movement. And that's our supply chain approach to building talent pipelines. And we are training thousands of companies via this talent supply chain solution on how to actually do high quality skill-based hiring. They're learning a whole lot of other things, but that's teaching the humans the why and the how, and then giving them the data infrastructure and the tools that enables them to execute. This is going to be a big lift, but we think the right set of partners are converging, and we know the demand is there, and now the technology and the change management is catching up with it. So a lot of exciting things coming our way. And just maybe a word of warning I'll put out there, Marni. It's like, just because we move to skill-based hiring, it doesn't automatically mean a more equitable talent marketplace. We could easily just be in another situation of the haves and the have-nots. I think we all understand the tremendous potential about moving towards a skill-based approach, but we really need to guard against the potential pitfalls and unintended consequences of that. So that's another thing that we hope to bring to the discussion is not just can we do it, but how do we do it well and how do we do it more equitably? That's going to have to be something we keep front and center all along the way.
Absolutely. We don't want it to become a slippery slope. It does have so much potential. We love the talent pipeline initiative. I think teaching the humans is always hard. You know, we educators understand that well. I think we kind of need a talent pipeline initiative for higher education as well, because there's a lot of change management on the education front as well as the hiring front when it comes to competency-based and skills-based educational practices. Wayne? What are you working on? I know Wayne Skipper and Concentric Sky is working really closely with OSN on a tool called the Open Skills Management Toolset to really lighten the load for those of us who are working in this direction. Wayne, what are you excited about that you think we should hear about from you today?
Thanks, Marni, and really excited to join everyone today. As many of you know, Concentric Sky likes to work on meaningful open interoperability standards in education. We contribute to standards work at a number of different bodies. You know, we operate the Badger micro-credentialing platform, which serves tens of millions of learners across 160 different countries, really to put these tools into practice and to help elevate the conversation by trying, failing fast, and advancing the work of the technology. You know, if I had to summarize my work just really succinctly, I would say that, you know, what I do and what we do are solve problems of semantics, right? And I look at that as why we work on interoperability standards and why, you know, we started the Open Taxonomy Project, why we contribute to OSN, et cetera. So, you know, for example, what is a skill? You know, many of us have spent many hours on the phone answering exactly that question. And the answer is really that it depends. What's the difference between a skill and a competency? Well, everything or nothing. What's the difference between a framework and an ontology? Well, everything and nothing. You know, it comes down to, you know, what is a power plug? Well, it depends on where you live, right? So one way to answer that question is to define it technically very specifically. I want to plug something in. I want to use an RJ45 connector. Well, okay, great, awesome. I know exactly what that is, what its properties are, what its size is, how it fits in, and everybody can work with that because it's a standard. So we take this general idea of plugging something in and we turn it into something that is well defined enough that we can build interoperable tools around it. And that's why we work in open standards, is because there's a lot of quibbling about semantics in this space. And we see this in not just what is a skill as a theoretical concept, but, you know, what is the skill communication? It means something different to you, to me, to business A, to business B, to business C. It means something different in every context. How do we overcome that? Right? What we're not able to do is just to say, oh, well, look, I found communication on a job board. I found communication on a resume. Oh, look, that's a match, right? That just doesn't work. Right? It's better than having nothing at all. It's a pointer, but it still leaves the employer with the need to assess that, to determine what it means. And so one of the things that gets me the most excited about OSN is that we are able to solve these problems of semantics with skills with rich skill descriptors. So what we're doing in essence is taking this flat idea of a keyword like communication and adding the metadata around it that is needed to understand it in a given context. And then doing that in a clearly enough defined way that it's like that RJ45 plug. I know exactly as an employer or as somebody that builds software for employers, how to plug into that system, right? I'm not just like flipping keywords around or, you know, scraping bodies of text. I'm not of the opinion personally that trying to use machine learning to derive information from bodies of text is a good use of machine learning, right? I think that what's needed is that we need to have subject matter experts help us define what communication means in a retail context or a pharma context, because the information just isn't there. It's not in the job posting because of the way job postings are created. It's not in a syllabus or a resume because of the way those documents are created. There's no application of machine learning that's going to answer what is communication, right? We have to define those things and again, do it in a way that everybody knows how to work with it in a clean and open fashion. And in my mind, that is the work of the Open Skills Network. That is the work of Concentric Sky in several different verticals. And that is what we're actually making possible with our work in Badger.
Absolutely. And it's complicated work, as we know. And it is really from an educator's point of view, and from an employer's point of view, just to think of a future when we can truly tag our competency definitions or our learning outcomes or our job roles or our job functions to a consistent, very granular, rich skills descriptions in ways that help us to better value those skills and value those journeys is just super empowering and exciting. And I think opens up a whole lot of change, as Jason points out, and perhaps a slippery slope if we don't watch it, but also a whole lot of opportunity to really transform our educational and hiring practices, as well as transform lives. I think students or employees, as they're moving through their everyday work and their everyday studies, surfacing this skills data to them in ways that are useful and actionable. I just can't even imagine the impact that'll have for individuals and the impact that'll have for all of us who are trying to move talent to opportunity. So if we kind of like zoom into the future of this dream, and we sort of open up our mind palaces and imagine, we're 12 to 18 months out on all this work. Let's just hear from each of you where you hope will be from your organization's perspective. So let's see, I gotta call, if you're wondering why I'm calling names, it's because I can't see everybody in one place. I'm calling names in no particular order. Jason, where do you think we'll be in 12 to 18 months?
Marni, if I can pull a little switcheroo, I was hoping to build on something Wayne said first, and then happy to answer the question. I think
all right.
Definitely onto something. Within the business community, we're often the worst offenders when it comes to putting together really poorly worded job descriptions and postings and creating all kinds of artificial barriers to opportunity. We're getting better at that, and skills-based hiring could certainly help us get there. But something I put in the chat is, skills are not flat. And, even when my community shows up to a conversation and says, we need soft skills, that's not helping because those context matters, and those skills in different contexts look incredibly different. So we're only going to introduce more complexity here, because even if you're trying to leverage a comprehensive taxonomy like an ONET, that still is a federally driven top-down taxonomy that's not actually reflecting what the labor market looks like. There's 900 plus occupations captured within it. Guess what? They're not real. Those are kind of the platonic forms of the labor market. When your feet touch the ground and you're inside a company and you're talking about actual jobs, even though they carry the same name or maybe tagged the same way, the composition of the skills could look differently, as does their demonstration. So, I like to say a rose might be a rose, but a welder is not a welder. Depending on where that welder works, the skill requirements can look very different. And it matters. Those things matter when it comes to hiring. So we're trying to get our community to get better at communicating out more three-dimensional skills, not only rich semantic language, but also trying to communicate how they are assessed, or what's the rubric for them, and then what are some really good examples of it done well. And we need to signal that out better, but that's a human problem as well as a technology problem. In terms of where we're going to be 10 to 15 years out, or was it 10 to 15 months?
12 to 18 months.
Okay, yeah. That's better. 12 to 18 months. I think we're going to be pretty far. This stuff's accelerating. And I think just with the challenges of the new economy, with the pandemic and everything else that's happening, it is like pouring fuel on a fire. And I think folks are accelerating far faster than we thought we were going to be just even a year ago. And it's an exciting time, but it is a long road, and it's going to take a lot of commitment. It's not like flipping a switch. But I do think within about a year's time, we are going to have an emerging data infrastructure with rich LER pilots, more structured data on credentials and jobs, and folks starting to actually connect these systems as a larger global distributed network. And we're going to start actually having an impact on people's lives. And I don't think it's going to be complete in that amount of time, but I think we're going to take a really healthy first step in that direction. A lot of things we've been talking about, we're going to be doing. But I think the next big frontier where I think a great deal of R&D is still needed is around the AI and machine learning applications, because the translation services are going to become really critical. And we're either going to hit a wall with that and we're going to lose time, or we're going to get ahead of that and continue to accelerate.
Andy, you're a big employer. I know, really, really deep in this work. Where do you see us? Where do you see Walmart going with this in the next 12 to 18 months?
Yeah, I actually have a more aggressive goal. I think we would hope that all 1.4 million of our associates are using skill-based competencies hiring by mid next year. So our plan is to literally credential badge against these skills for every job in every store by mid to early next year. And then that allows us to start using it for all kinds of different things. So, that's our goal, is that with less than 12 months, we want to have every single associate on it. And then hopefully in 12 to 18 months, we're at a place where there's some independent governing body that is managing this skills taxonomy and this learning employment record, that we can start to share talent across in skills.
Wow, that's amazing. That really is amazing. I can't wait to see that unfold. Kacey, what about you? Where is WGU going with your team's work in the next 12 to 18 months?
Sure. So in the next 12 to 18, we will see from WGU a continued expansion of our open skills library and the rich skills descriptors included. We will have an entire portfolio of program offerings that are translated through skills, all of our achievements tagged to rich skills descriptors, in which we can then use that information to surface achievements to a student's achievement wallet built on LER technology that will allow us to empower our students to market themselves better about the skills that they have demonstrated by the credentials that they hold, in addition to surfacing different pathways to opportunity, be that career opportunity or continued education opportunities for them as well. So that is where we will be in 12 to 18.
That is so good to hear. I'm super excited about that. Phil, what about Salesforce and Trailhead? Where are you headed in this work?
I think Trailhead's going to be used for our internal skills-based futures as well. So we're really adopting this skills profiles for our own employees and starting to investigate how we can grow our own talent over time, and how our company is even being reshaped by COVID and who we service as this pandemic has really changed the way our economy works. And Trailhead, for the public, I think we're just going to really go with this OSN rich skill descriptor language as it starts to come out. And we have eight or nine personas in our ecosystem that can work in any really domain. And if from architect to administrator, there's many different pathways that we can define and then start to inspire people with their own information, their own data, skills-based data, to go out and solve problems for our customers. I think it's a really bright future for everybody.
Super exciting. Connie, what are you working on at Southern New Hampshire University? Where do you think you all will be in 18 months?
Yeah, sure. In a couple of places. So one is similar to others. We are deep in work with Credential Engine, Concentric Sky, and Brighthive, as we have both courses in competency-based education and are tagging and mapping all of those to skills. And so in 12 to 18 months, we hope to have that done, in addition to making sure that it's all present and available in Credential Engine, and that we've run some tests and some experiments with Badger pathways in order to build out and think about what it means to use these skills to build out pathways. I think the other thing I'll add to that, because Jason did such a nice job of talking about the human side of this, we have been building communities of practice internally around interoperability and around skills, because this is not business as usual. And we are, many of us are very large institutions for which this is the tip of the spear for real transformational change. And so we're doing a lot of work around our own learning related to building our acumen around what this means for the future and for our learners.
That is so great to hear. Super exciting. And Kelly, where are you all going to be 12 to 18 months from now?
Man, you know, it feels like I agree with one of the earlier comments about how quickly this is moving right now. So for us, I mean, we're just on fire. In 12 to 18 months, really, it depends on how quickly everybody else goes. So we're going to keep pushing on our technology, a lot of the things that I mentioned, but there's even more than that. And as those RSDs become available, we want to layer in capabilities to be able to use that in some of those openly free resources as well, so that we continue to push from our aspect on getting those out there, helping people be able to navigate and use those within their own practices, and really just pushing the change. I think for us, it's definitely on a global scale. You know, moving that out, I would say from a 12 to 18 month perspective is, you know, how can we then take this and move it out from maybe an English language to tons of other languages across the globe, and make sure that this is really being spread at a large scale.
That is really exciting, and it is global work, as we know, and it's great to hear you've got that on your roadmap. That's wonderful. We do have a little time for a few questions. So Matt, you know, you've been hosting the Q&A in the chat. Can you pick out a couple of juicy questions for this panel as we wrap up?
Sure. There's been a lot of discussion around and a lot of +1s on comments around skills in context, and how you know that's really the heart of making these open skills meaningful in a skills-based education and skills-based hiring setting. So I think a summative question across those is, how is the Open Skills Network in the work that that different panelists are engaging in, helping solve for that skills in context challenge?
I would love to take a first stab at answering that one. And I think the question of skills in context, the OSN is really helping solve for that problem where context is everything yet lacking. And we're doing that through the use of rich skills descriptors and a commitment to open skills libraries where that context can become evident, because we all know what communication looks like as applied for a nurse versus a software engineer versus an air traffic controller looks very different. And it has been a very complex and expensive endeavor to build that information out when it already exists. We just have to start breaking down the silos to let each other access that information and share. And so I really think that is where the OSN is going to help remove that barrier to the context, is through the use of rich skills descriptors and open libraries.
Excellent. Thanks so much. A second question that's come up a number of times is really this emerging relationship between structured data, open data on skills on the web, and that kind of human process that goes into creating that meaning around that data, and emerging AI tools that can sometimes elicit that same kind of semantic meaning. Like the most dramatic example of this is GPT-3, the crazy AI that OpenAI has released that can write philosophical essays. And so I would love to see if any of the panelists want to tackle this question of how is OSN and how are open skills really enabling that, that kind of emergent intersection between structured data on skills and AI that supports skill translation, skills matching, skills elicitation.
Yeah, I'll take a first stab at that one. This is Wayne. So, you know, the reason that we have things like GPT-3 and, you know, other types of machine learning is because of early efforts to create structured data such as the Semantic Web. So the inventors of the internet foresaw a future where we would need to take human knowledge and make it computable. So for example, this is the difference between the way that Google worked, which is just finding words on pages, right? Trying to determine the context, and the way something like Wolfram Alpha works. I'm not sure if you know that search engine, take a look at it, and you'll see what's possible when you start looking at structured data. So I think the missing piece is that, you know, technologists also often want to solve all problems with technology. It makes sense, right? But you can't solve all problems with technology. There's prerequisite work that has to happen. And in this case, what we need is to have subject matter experts create our context for us so that we understand the meaning, and then we can give it machine readable structure. I would just reiterate my opinion that trying to use machine learning to process blocks of texts is not the right way to address this problem, because the meaning doesn't exist in those blocks of text. It exists in the minds of people, sometimes who are 2 or 3 steps removed from the blocks of text. Job description is hardly ever written by the person actually who does the job, for example. So, I think this is a critical intermediary step to enable the application of machine learning and AI. And I would go as far as to say that's our ultimate goal: predictive workforce analytics to the benefit of all.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Wayne. There's another question I'm wondering, Connie, if you can take it, where Nafisa is kind of asking for a little bit more on the ground story of the work that had to go in, that SNHU has gone into in kind of mapping skills-based competencies to course outcomes.
Yeah, and I put a little bit of a comment in the chat. It's been interesting for us because we use direct assessment, CBE. We're not using course-based CBE. So we've actually created our own internal standard aligned with NETCHI that allows us to map competencies to courses. And that's been hugely useful. It's a tremendous amount of work in terms of developing the competency statements and the competency offerings and mapping that. But we've made huge progress on that. And now we're partnering with Emsi and we're mapping our competencies to skills, so that then we've got a through line from courses to competency to skills.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Connie. Another question that's come up quite a bit is actually just how to get involved. What are the ways that that folks that are on this call that are interested in participating and contributing, how can they get involved? Maybe Marni, do you want to kick this off? And
I was going to kick that one right back to you and have you talk about how folks can get involved.
All right, sounds good. Yes, so we'll make sure to put it again in the chat. You can go to openskills.org, openskillsnetwork.org. And there are 4 active work groups right now. So certainly you can join the community and just be informed and come to the monthly at-large meetings where there are just updates given. But if you want to get your hands dirty, there are 4 active work groups right now in the Open Skills Network. The first is the governance work group that is doing the hard work of defining the network charter, its goals, how decisions are made, how IP gets contributed and can be a community developed, community used asset that folks can still incorporate into their kind of enterprise products. So that governance work group is work group number 1. Work group number 2 is the technical work group. This work group, each of these are led by community members, which is great. So there's opportunities both for leadership and for contribution. That work group is working through a lot of the deep technical details for things like the rich skills descriptors and the Open Skills Management Toolkit, community developed and community contributed IP for the Open Skills Network. Third is the market leadership work group. This work group is all about adoption. What are the actions that OSN members can take to get more institutions at the level where they're interested in skills-based education, skills-based hiring, and where they're more capable of being able to do that. How can members really both be the tip of the spear in making the kind of market moves toward open skills, as well as bring more folks along. And then the last work group is the policy work group. There's a great energy and a recognition among open skills members that a lot of what is going to help this transition to skills-based education, skills-based hiring are nation state level policy mechanisms. There's real power in having the entire network get behind a unified policy agenda for what policies can help drive that change and incentivize adoption. So those are the 4 work groups. We welcome folks to sign up And also in joining, you can join the Open Skills Slack, which is an open community Slack for communication with other network members, connection, collaboration, etc. So those are all ways that you can get involved.
Absolutely. And we would love you to be involved. We have over 40 sort of members to the Open Skills Network. Today, we have over 90 institutions that represent employers of every size, universities of every size, the military, government agencies. And it is a very focused and a little bit geeky, but very focused and important and powerful conversation for our time. So please join us. Panelists, really thank you for joining us on fairly short notice. You are all wonderful. You all deserve your own hour-long panel to just talk about all the amazing things that you're doing, because it just didn't give it justice, but we got a sense of where you're going. We will all follow you. And yeah, thanks everybody for attending, and have a wonderful day and the wonderful rest of your ASU+GSV Summit. Thanks so much.